what? They score! They score!
Welcome to God's Playbook with your host, Father Rico Passero.
Lock at the 20, 10, 5, touchdown! Touchdown!
Let's play ball.
Friends, welcome back to God's Playbook. Today, our first reading from Mass is from 1 Corinthians 6, 1-11, and it talks about settling differences. St. Paul calls them grievances. Later, he refers to them as lawsuits. But what I want us to think about is settling our differences in general. Naturally, when we're in relationship with one another, hopefully there are more good experiences than difficult ones. But the more we spend time with someone, the more the reality is there will be differences at times. And so how we settle our differences with one another is also a very big and important thing to focus on as a disciple of Jesus. Many people deal with differences in very different ways. Some get silent, some may be a bit confrontational, others may be somewhere in the middle. And yet, no matter what our style might be in dealing with trying to settle differences, we need to always remind ourselves that we're called to be a disciple of Jesus, and we're to speak and act in ways that are appropriate as a friend of the Lord. St. Paul speaks about the importance of dealing with grievances with one another. So when I have beef with you, so to speak, I should be addressing it just with you. He says, not taking it to the courts or telling the whole community about it. Another way of saying that is we don't believe in triangulation or gossiping. What should take place is, again, the people that have issues with the other person should speak one-on-one, or only the parties that are involved should be present. This is a great way of settling our differences in a respectful manner. Sometimes, however, this is, of course, not possible. And that's why we have people like lawyers and courts to settle significant differences. But when we're looking at a relationship among someone we love or are called to love, as Christians, we want to minimize the negativity. That doesn't mean just pretending what has gone wrong hasn't gone wrong, but rather it allows us to actually address the issue for what it is. A particular issue. It's not meant to ruin our day. It's not meant to sever the relationship. Let's just deal with the matter at hand. Think in our marriages. How many times do issues not get solved or resolved, and they fester and fester and fester, and then all of a sudden a volcano erupts, and forgetting to take out the garbage becomes, you don't love me, and why did I get married to you, and on and on and on. Those of you who are married perhaps can relate to what I've just said, although hopefully not. The reality is, just because we have differences doesn't mean we don't love each other. And so we need to give ourselves permission to have differences with one another. It's going to happen. It's only natural. Kumbaya land or living in La La Land is not a reality. But how we respond to settling those differences is key. So, is my language respectful of the other person? Is my language so much so that they have to be on the defensive? Or can I speak from my own experience? I'm going to use an example with Tom. Tom is a fictitious person. Tom, when you speak to me that way, it makes me feel like this. Would it be okay? Can we make a commitment to being more respectful in our language towards one another? Is very different from, Tom, when you shout at me, you're just a very mean person, or our language might even be stronger. When we speak to our own experience and how it makes us feel, then it becomes less judgmental and more expressive of what's going on. Also, asking questions rather than making statements. Tom, what did you mean when you said that to me the other day? Because I took it as hurtful, but maybe that wasn't your perception. Could you elaborate on that for me? Is very different from, I can't believe you said that to me, and who do you think you are, Tom, and how dare you judge me? And because sometimes our perceptions may be different from what the intention really was. So again, how do we settle our differences? It's all in the approach. God doesn't expect us to ignore them and to pretend they never happened. Although sometimes when things are so minor, perhaps we can turn the other cheek or look the other way. But there are times in which, as St. Paul acknowledges, differences need to be addressed. Sometimes things need to be said. And so how we address them is vital. Also, when we're addressing differences, we have to ask ourselves the question, am I willing to do what's right or always be right? Am I going to go in and win the argument at all costs? Am I going to belittle the other person? Am I going to gang up on them? Or am I going to seek resolution, reconciliation, and maintain respect? For each one of us, friends, we are called to settle our differences in Christ-like ways. For each one of us, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is my approach? Am I careful of my language? Am I respectful to the other? And am I actually seeking resolution? Or am I having a fight for the sake of fighting? Am I bringing up the difference to make life more challenging? For each one of us, friends, we need to ask ourselves such questions. St. Paul advises us to remember that we are children of God, disciples of Jesus, and therefore should be respectful, loving, and kind. Speaking truths is not sinful. Raising concerns is not bad. Looking for ways to settle them, however, is absolutely vital. So today, let's look at ourselves. Let's not complain about the way other people settle differences, but rather think, how do I settle differences? How can I improve? What is God calling me to change? And using the past to teach us in ways in which strategies have worked, perhaps each one of us can look to settle differences, not accusing the other, but also looking for ways in which I can change. Here's what I'm committed to do. Here's how I'm going to try to get better. How do we settle our differences? Friends, even before we get into all of that, please God, we turn to God and say, Lord, help me, give me the words, keep me calm so I can settle this difference. How are we called to settle our differences? For God's Playbook, friends, I'm Father Rico. God loves you, and so do I.
If you like what you hear, please consider supporting us using any of our affiliate links in the description below via Buzzsprout, Ko-Fi, or GoFundMe. Thanks, and God bless.